There is a moment in the night that becomes familiar to many of us as the years pass. You wake suddenly, perhaps between 2 and 3 in the morning, and you are completely alert. Your mind begins to turn. Your heart beats a little faster, and you look at the clock with a quiet frustration. Because this has happened before, and you suspect it will happen again. What if this experience is not simply aging, not something you must accept, but a signal from your body about something deeper? What if the body is not failing, but speaking, and we have simply misunderstood the language? Today we are going to explore what that 3 a.m. awakening actually means, what it reveals about how the body changes with time, and why the most common explanations have missed the mark entirely. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The quiet hours, understanding sleep, metabolism, and the aging body. There is a moment in the night that becomes familiar to many people as they grow older. You wake suddenly, perhaps around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you are completely alert. Your mind may begin to turn over the events of the day or anticipate the tasks ahead. Your heart might be beating a little faster than seems reasonable for someone lying still in a dark room. You look at the clock and feel a mixture of frustration and resignation, because you know this has happened before and will likely happen again. This experience is so common among those over 50 that many have come to accept it as an inevitable part of aging. But what if it is not inevitable? What if the body is not simply wearing out, but rather sending a signal that something specific requires attention? The way we sleep, or fail to sleep, as we age is not random. It follows patterns that reflect deeper changes in how the body manages energy, processes food, and responds to the world around it. By understanding these patterns, it becomes possible to work with the body rather than against it. The goal is not to force sleep through stronger pills or more elaborate bedtime rituals, but to understand what the body actually needs during the night and provide those conditions consistently. This is a calm exploration of what happens during those nighttime hours, why the body sometimes interrupts its own rest, and what the research suggests about creating the conditions for deeper, more continuous sleep as we age. Part 1. The architecture of a night's rest. Sleep is not a single state, but a journey through multiple stages, each with its own purpose and character. Understanding this landscape helps explain why certain disruptions occur at predictable times. When you first close your eyes and drift off, you enter light sleep. This is a transitional state, easily disturbed. From there, you progress into deeper sleep, where the body performs much of its physical repair work. Tissues are rebuilt, muscles recover from the day's activities, and various maintenance processes occur at the cellular level. This deep sleep is sometimes called slow-wave sleep, named for the distinct patterns visible on brain scans. Later in the night, you enter rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. This is when dreaming most commonly occurs, and it appears to be important for memory consolidation and emotional processing. The brain is quite active during REM, even though the body remains still. A complete sleep cycle, moving through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, takes approximately 90 minutes. A full night's rest typically contains 4 to 6 such cycles. The balance shifts as the night progresses, with more deep sleep in the first half and more REM sleep in the second half. This architecture matters because disruptions do not affect all stages equally. Waking at 3 a.m., for example, often occurs as you are transitioning between cycles or emerging from a period of deep sleep. Understanding why you wake at that moment requires looking at what is happening in the body at that specific time. The body does not simply shut down for the night. It remains active, performing essential tasks that cannot be done during the day. The digestive system, having completed its work on the evening meal, can finally rest. The immune system ramps up certain activities, The brain processes the day's experiences and consolidates memories. And the liver, which plays a surprisingly central role in the night's activities, engages in a complex set of tasks that directly affect whether you stay asleep or wake unexpectedly. Part 2. The liver's night shift. The liver is often discussed in terms of its role in processing alcohol or filtering toxins, but its nighttime functions are equally important and often overlooked. During the hours you sleep, the liver is actively engaged in maintaining the body's fuel supply, processing waste products, and preparing for the coming day. One of its most critical nighttime tasks is maintaining blood sugar levels. The brain, which accounts for approximately 20% of the body's energy consumption, cannot simply pause its activity during sleep. It requires a steady supply of fuel throughout the night. Unlike muscles, which have their own stored energy in the form of glycogen, the brain depends almost entirely on the liver to supply what it needs. A healthy liver stores glycogen during the day, particularly after meals, and releases it gradually during the night to keep blood sugar stable. This release is carefully calibrated, providing just enough glucose to meet the brain's needs without causing spikes or crashes. But this system depends on the liver being in good condition and on the body cells responding properly to insulin, the hormone that regulates blood sugar. When these conditions are not met, the night can become a series of disruptions rather than a period of continuous rest. Research has observed that people with certain metabolic patterns experience blood sugar fluctuations during sleep that they are not consciously aware of. These fluctuations follow a pattern. Blood sugar rises slightly. The body releases insulin to bring it down. And then blood sugar may dip low enough that the brain perceives a shortage of fuel. At this point, the body releases adrenaline to quickly mobilize stored glucose and restore blood sugar to a safe level. Adrenaline is effective at raising blood sugar, but it has another effect as well. It wakes you up. It prepares the body for action. This is why the 3 a.m. awakening often feels different from simply stirring briefly and drifting back to sleep. You are fully alert, perhaps with your heart beating faster than usual, because your body has just received a dose of its most powerful stimulant hormone. The irony is that this adrenaline release is not a sign that your adrenal glands are failing. They are working exactly as designed. The problem lies upstream, in the liver's inability to maintain steady blood sugar throughout the night. The adrenaline is not the cause of the disruption, but the response to it. Part 3. When the liver struggles, several factors can compromise the liver's ability to perform its nighttime functions. Understanding these factors helps explain why sleep disruption becomes more common with age and why certain dietary and lifestyle patterns are associated with better sleep. One of the most common issues is the accumulation of fat within liver cells. This condition, often called fatty liver, is extremely common in Zhongnan and older adults, particularly those who carry excess weight around the abdomen. But it can also occur in people who appear thin, a pattern sometimes called skinny fat, where fat accumulates internally without obvious external signs. When liver cells contain excess fat, they cannot store glycogen as effectively. They also become less responsive to insulin signals, which means the liver's sugar production becomes less precisely regulated. Instead of a steady, gentle release of glucose throughout the night, the liver may release too much at certain times and too little at others, setting up the cycle of blood sugar swings that triggers adrenaline release. Another factor is the overall condition of the liver's detoxification pathways. The liver processes not only the nutrients from food, but also various compounds that the body needs to eliminate, including metabolic waste products, environmental toxins, and excess hormones. Many of these processes occur primarily at night. If the liver is overwhelmed by the volume of substances it needs to process, or if it lacks certain nutrients required for efficient detoxification, This nighttime work can become strained. Some researchers have observed that people with congested liver function may experience physical sensations that reflect this strain, such as a feeling of fullness or pressure under the right rib cage, or referred tension in the right shoulder area. These sensations can themselves interfere with sleep, making it difficult to find a comfortable position or to relax fully. The liver also produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder and released after meals to help digest fats. When bile becomes too thick or sluggish, a condition sometimes called biliary sludge, it can create back pressure in the liver and contribute to the sensations described above. This is one reason why dietary choices that support healthy bile flow are often mentioned in discussions of sleep quality, even though the connection may not be immediately obvious. Part 4. The question of fuel. The brain's dependence on the liver for nighttime fuel raises an interesting question. Does the brain actually require glucose? Or can it run on other sources of energy? Research over recent decades has clarified that the brain is quite adaptable in its fuel preferences. While it can certainly use glucose, it can also use compounds called ketones, which are produced by the liver from fat stores. In fact, the brain appears to function quite efficiently on ketones, and only a small portion of its energy needs absolutely requires glucose. This observation has implications for sleep. If the brain can run on ketones, then it is not dependent on the liver's glucose regulation throughout the night. The blood sugar swings that trigger adrenaline release become irrelevant because the brain is not relying on that system for fuel. This is why some people report improved sleep when they shift to eating patterns that lower carbohydrate intake and increase fat utilization. By reducing the body's reliance on glucose as the primary fuel, they reduce the likelihood of blood sugar fluctuations during the night. The liver can continue producing ketones steadily, providing the brain with a consistent energy supply that does not trigger the same regulatory mechanisms as glucose. However, the transition from glucose dependence to fat adaptation is not instantaneous. When people first change their eating patterns in this direction, they may experience a period of adjustment lasting 1 to 2 weeks. During this time, the body is learning to produce and use ketones efficiently while still accustomed to relying on glucose. Some people report temporary sleep disruption during this transition, which typically resolves once adaptation is complete. This observation suggests that consistency in eating patterns may be more important than any single dietary prescription. The body adapts to the patterns it experiences regularly, and abrupt changes can temporarily disrupt systems that had become accustomed to a different rhythm. Part 5. The rhythm of light and darkness. Beyond the liver's metabolic functions, sleep is governed by another fundamental system, the circadian rhythm. This internal clock, present in virtually all living things, coordinates biological processes with the external cycle of day and night. The circadian rhythm is not merely a psychological preference for sleeping at certain times. It is a deeply embedded biological program that influences hormone release, body temperature, digestion, and countless other functions. When it functions properly, it helps ensure that you feel alert during the day and sleepy at night. When it is disrupted, sleep problems often follow. The primary signal that sets the circadian rhythm is light. Specifically, exposure to light in the morning signals the body that daytime has begun and triggers a cascade of hormonal changes that prepare you for activity. Cortisol, often misunderstood as purely a stress hormone, follows a natural daily rhythm that is set by morning light. It rises in the early morning hours, peaks around the time you typically wake, and gradually declines throughout the day, reaching its lowest point in the late evening. This pattern is healthy and necessary. The problem arises when the rhythm becomes shifted or flattened, often due to insufficient morning light exposure or excessive light exposure in the evening. Many people in modern environments spend their mornings indoors, under artificial light that is much dimmer than natural daylight. They may not realize that this deprives their circadian system of the strong signal it needs to set the clock properly. Without that morning signal, the entire rhythm can drift later, leading to difficulty falling asleep at a reasonable hour and difficulty waking in the morning. Evening light exposure is equally important. Light, particularly the blue wavelengths emitted by screens and LED bulbs, signals the body that daytime is still present. This suppresses melatonin, the hormone that promotes sleepiness, and can push the circadian rhythm later. For those who already struggle with sleep timing, evening light exposure can make the problem worse. The solution is not to live in darkness, but to align light exposure with natural patterns. Morning light, ideally from the sun, helps anchor the circadian rhythm. Evening dimness, beginning several hours before bed, allows melatonin to rise naturally and prepares the body for sleep. Part 6. The pressure to sleep. Circadian rhythm determines when you are biologically prepared to sleep, but another system determines how strongly you feel that need. This system is sometimes called sleep pressure, and it builds throughout the time you are awake. Sleep pressure is created by the accumulation of adenosine, a compound that binds to receptors in the brain and promotes sleepiness. The longer you are awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and the stronger the drive to sleep becomes. During sleep, adenosine is cleared away, and the cycle begins again. This system explains why physical activity during the day improves sleep at night. When you are physically active, you generate more adenosine, increasing sleep pressure. When you are sedentary, you generate less, and the drive to sleep may be weaker even when bedtime arrives at the appropriate circadian time. For those over 50, maintaining sufficient physical activity becomes increasingly important for generating adequate sleep pressure. The activities that once came naturally through work or daily routines may have diminished, but the body still needs movement to create the conditions for deep rest. This does not necessarily mean intense exercise, though resistance training and higher intensity activities are particularly effective at building sleep pressure. It means consistent movement throughout the day, enough that the body recognizes it has done work and requires recovery. Stimulants like caffeine interfere with this system by blocking adenosine receptors. They do not eliminate adenosine, but they prevent you from feeling its effects. When the caffeine wears off, the accumulated adenosine can hit all at once, sometimes leading to a sudden crash in alertness. For sleep, the timing of caffeine matters greatly. Afternoon or evening caffeine can persist into the night, reducing sleep pressure precisely when you need it most. Part 7. Nutrients that support the night. The body's nighttime systems do not operate in a vacuum. They depend on adequate supplies of specific nutrients, many of which become harder to obtain or absorb with age. Magnesium is perhaps the most widely recognized nutrient for sleep support. It plays a role in hundreds of enzymatic reactions, including those involved in muscle relaxation and nervous system calming. Magnesium also supports the receptors for GABA, a neurotransmitter that promotes calm and reduces neuronal excitability. Some research suggests that magnesium levels tend to decline with age, and that maintaining adequate intake may support better sleep quality. Zinc works in conjunction with magnesium in many biological processes. Some people report that taking zinc and magnesium together produces more noticeable effects on sleep than either mineral alone. This may reflect their complementary roles in nervous system function and hormone regulation. Vitamin B1, also called thiamine, is less commonly discussed in relation to sleep, but plays an important role in energy metabolism and nervous system function. It is particularly relevant for those who have consumed diets high in refined carbohydrates over many years, as these diets can increase the body's requirements for B vitamins. Some observers note that B1 supplementation seems to help with the mental tension that can interfere with sleep onset, though the mechanisms are not fully understood. Potassium works with magnesium to support healthy blood pressure and muscle function. It also plays a role in insulin sensitivity, which connects back to the blood sugar regulation discussed earlier. Low potassium intakes are common in modern diets, which tend to be high in sodium and low in whole plant foods that provide potassium. These nutrients are best obtained from food, but some people find that targeted supplementation, particularly of magnesium, provides additional support. The key is consistency rather than high doses. The body uses these nutrients continuously, and maintaining adequate levels over time matters more than occasional large intakes. Part 8. Food timing in the night. When you eat may be as important as what you eat when it comes to sleep quality. The body's digestive system follows its own circadian rhythm, with enzyme production, gut motility, and nutrient absorption varying throughout the day. Eating close to bedtime forces the digestive system to remain active during hours when it would naturally be slowing down. This can interfere with sleep in several ways. The physical process of digestion generates heat and requires energy, which can raise body temperature slightly at a time when decreasing temperature normally promotes sleep. The presence of food in the stomach can also trigger reflux in those prone to it, causing discomfort that disrupts sleep. More relevant to the liver's nighttime functions. Eating late means that nutrients are still being absorbed and processed when the liver would otherwise be focused on its overnight tasks. The liver must prioritize handling incoming nutrients over maintaining steady glucose release and performing detoxification work. This can set up the conditions for blood sugar fluctuations later in the night. The conventional recommendation to stop eating several hours before bed has sound physiological basis. 4 hours is often cited as an adequate interval, allowing most of the digestive work to be completed before sleep begins. This does not mean you must be hungry at bedtime. A well-timed evening meal that includes sufficient protein, healthy fats, and vegetables can provide satiety that lasts through the evening without requiring additional snacks. For those accustomed to evening eating, adjusting timing may require a period of adaptation. The body's hunger signals are partly learned, and they respond to habitual eating patterns. Shifting meal timing gradually, perhaps by 15 or 30 minutes each day, can make the transition more comfortable than an abrupt change. Part 9. The question of alcohol. Alcohol deserves special mention in any discussion of sleep, particularly for those over 50. Its effects on sleep are complex and often misunderstood. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, which means it can indeed help you fall asleep initially. Many people report that a drink in the evening helps them relax and drift off more easily. But the story does not end there. As alcohol is metabolized, its effects on sleep change. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep, particularly in the first half of the night. When the liver finishes processing the alcohol, usually a few hours after falling asleep, a rebound effect can occur. The brain attempts to make up for lost REM sleep, leading to more vivid dreams and more frequent awakenings. This is why people who drink before bed often report sleeping soundly for the first few hours, but waking frequently or restlessly later in the night. Alcohol also affects the liver's nighttime functions directly. The liver must prioritize alcohol metabolism over its other tasks, including maintaining blood sugar stability. This can exacerbate the blood sugar fluctuations discussed earlier, increasing the likelihood of adrenaline-mediated awakenings. For those who enjoy alcohol, the timing and amount matter greatly. A single drink consumed early in the evening, with food, allows more time for metabolism before sleep. Consuming alcohol close to bedtime, particularly in larger amounts, is more likely to disrupt sleep architecture and trigger nighttime awakenings. Part 10. Movement and the aging body. Physical activity affects sleep through multiple pathways, and its importance may actually increase with age. The body's need for movement does not diminish just because careers wind down or daily routines change. Resistance training, which includes any activity that requires muscles to work against force, appears particularly beneficial for sleep. This type of activity builds muscle, supports metabolic health, and generates significant sleep pressure. It also addresses the age-related loss of muscle mass, which can affect metabolism and physical function in ways that indirectly influence sleep. But any movement contributes. Walking, gardening, swimming, dancing, and daily activities all add to the total physical load that the body recognizes and responds to with restorative sleep. The key is consistency and variety, engaging different muscle groups and movement patterns over time. For those new to structured exercise or returning after a long absence, starting gently is wise. The goal is not to exhaust yourself, but to gradually build a pattern of regular activity that your body can adapt to and rely on. Even short walks, performed consistently, can create noticeable improvements in sleep quality over time. The timing of exercise relative to sleep deserves consideration. For some people, vigorous exercise too close to bedtime can be stimulating, raising body temperature and heart rate when these should be declining. For others, evening exercise poses no problem. Observing your own response is more useful than following general rules. Part 11. The environment of rest. The space where you sleep exerts a constant, subtle influence on your nervous system. Small adjustments to this environment can cumulatively support better rest. Temperature matters. The body's internal temperature naturally drops during sleep, and a cool room supports this process. Temperatures that are too warm can interfere with the body's ability to cool itself, leading to more restless sleep. Most sleep research suggests that slightly cool room temperatures, typically between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, are conducive to good sleep. Light exposure during sleep, even through closed eyelids, can suppress melatonin and fragment sleep. Blackout curtains or sleep masks can be helpful for those whose bedrooms are not completely dark. Even small light sources, such as alarm clock displays or standby lights on electronics, can be disruptive for sensitive individuals. Sound matters differently for different people. Some find complete silence most restful, while others prefer background sound to mask intermittent noises. White noise machines or fans can provide consistent sound that helps the brain remain unaware of sudden noises from outside. The surface you sleep on supports or hinders the body's attempts to relax. Mattresses that are too soft or too firm can create pressure points that cause frequent position changes throughout the night. Pillows that properly support the head and neck relative to your sleeping position can reduce morning stiffness and nighttime discomfort. These environmental factors are not glamorous, but they matter precisely because they operate continuously throughout the night. A small improvement in any one factor may not transform sleep, but cumulative improvements across multiple factors can create noticeably better conditions for rest. Part 12. The social and emotional dimensions. Sleep does not exist in isolation from the rest of life. The emotional content of your days, the quality of your relationships, and your sense of purpose all influence your ability to rest at night. Anxiety and rumination are common barriers to sleep, particularly for those who wake during the night and find their minds spinning with worries. This experience can create a secondary layer of distress, where you become anxious about being awake, which further prevents sleep. Some research suggests that having a consistent practice for processing the day's events, such as journaling or brief reflection before bed, can help reduce nighttime rumination. The idea is to give the brain an opportunity to file away concerns rather than holding them in active memory through the night. Social connection also appears relevant to sleep quality. People with strong social ties tend to report better sleep than those who are isolated. This may reflect the stress buffering effects of social support. Or it may be that meaningful daytime engagement contributes to the sense of satisfaction that supports restful sleep. Purpose and meaning, though difficult to measure, are frequently mentioned by older adults as important to their overall well-being, including their sleep. Having reasons to wake up in the morning may subtly reinforce the circadian system and provide motivation for the daytime activities that build sleep pressure. These factors are not separate from the physiological mechanisms discussed earlier. They influence stress hormones, activity levels, and nervous system tone, all of which feed into the biological systems that govern sleep. Part 13. The integration of knowledge. The various factors discussed here do not operate independently. They form an interconnected system where each element influences the others. Understanding these connections can help make sense of why certain approaches work and others fail. The liver's metabolic function affects blood sugar stability, which affects adrenaline release, which affects wakefulness. But liver function itself is affected by diet, physical activity, body composition, and nutrient status. The circadian rhythm affects hormone timing, which affects when you feel alert and when you feel sleepy. But circadian rhythm is set by light exposure, which is under your control through daily habits. Sleep pressure builds through physical activity, which also supports metabolic health and liver function. No single intervention is likely to solve sleep problems in isolation. But consistent attention to multiple factors can gradually shift the system toward better function. The body adapts to the patterns it experiences regularly, and small changes, maintained over time, create new patterns. This is why patience matters when addressing sleep concerns. The body does not typically respond instantly to changes. It requires time to adapt, to clear out old patterns, and to establish new ones. A week of improved habits may not produce dramatic results, but several months of consistency often do. Part 14. The calm perspective. There is a tendency in modern culture to treat sleep problems as emergencies that must be fixed immediately with powerful interventions. This approach often backfires, creating additional stress about sleep that further interferes with rest. A calmer perspective recognizes that sleep, like many biological functions, fluctuates naturally. Perfect sleep every night is not a realistic goal for most people, nor is it necessary for health. The body is resilient and can compensate for occasional poor nights. What matters more is the overall pattern over weeks and months. Occasional awakenings are normal. Periods of lighter sleep are normal. The goal is not to eliminate all variation, but to create conditions that support generally good sleep, with the understanding that some nights will be better than others. For those who wake at 3 a.m., this perspective can be particularly helpful. Instead of lying in bed growing increasingly frustrated, some people find it useful to get up briefly, engage in a quiet activity in dim light, and return to bed when they feel sleepy again. This approach, sometimes called stimulus control, prevents the bed from becoming associated with wakefulness and frustration. The body has its own wisdom about sleep. It knows how to rest when the conditions are right. The task is not to force sleep, but to provide those conditions consistently and then trust the body to do what it knows how to do. Part 15. Looking forward. Sleep changes with age, but it does not have to become a source of suffering. The body's systems remain adaptable, capable of responding to improved conditions at any stage of life. The liver, despite years of accumulated stress, can clear fat and improve its function when given the right conditions. The circadian rhythm can reset when exposed to proper light signals. Sleep pressure can rebuild through consistent physical activity. These are not theoretical possibilities, but observed realities in people who make sustained changes. The path forward is not about perfection, but about direction. Small improvements in diet timing, light exposure, physical activity, and sleep environment can cumulatively shift the system toward better function. Each positive change makes the next one easier, creating a virtuous cycle rather than a struggle against the body. The 3 a.m. awakening, when understood as a signal rather than a failure, becomes useful information. It points toward specific systems that need attention, perhaps the liver's metabolic function, perhaps the circadian rhythm, perhaps sleep pressure from insufficient daytime activity. Instead of fighting the signal, you can address what it indicates. This is not a promise of perfect sleep or a guarantee that every night will be restful. It is an invitation to understand the body's language and to work with it rather than against it. The quiet hours of the night, when understood properly, can become what they are meant to be, a time of restoration, preparing you for the active hours of the day ahead. The 3 a.m. awakening, when understood properly, is not a sign of failure, but a piece of communication from a body that is still trying to maintain its balance. It points towards systems that may need attention, the quiet work of the liver, the rhythm of light and darkness, the pressure that builds through movement, the timing of nourishment. When we learn to read these signals, we stop fighting against the body and begin working with it. If this exploration has stirred a question or a reflection of your own, we would welcome your thoughts in the comments. And if you would like to continue exploring the archive, we invite you to subscribe so that new wisdom finds its way to you. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.